For years, Germany was held up as an example of how green a nation could be. They had ambitious plans and they were investing massive amounts of money into renewable energy forms such as solar, wind, and biofuels. Germany was apparently well placed to reach the still mythical status of being a net zero nation with their emissions. We were told we have to follow Germany's example if we wanted to save the world from the dreaded climate change. I mean, otherwise, oceans would rise, polar bears would die, and the world would run out of fluffy bunnies. If one was to question Germany's energy path, of course, they'd be labeled as climate heretics, and surely these are people who want the world to burn. Well, Germany just quietly and pretty sheepishly announced they're returning to coal-fired electricity generation. Coal is arguably the most emissions-intensive form of electricity generation of them all. When the only alternative, though, is to bankrupt your nation while citizens freeze in the dark, coal suddenly doesn't look so bad anymore. Now, this hasn't stopped German Formula One driver Sebastian Vettel from committing an astounding act of hypocrisy as he arrived in Canada after having shipped an entire race car here along with his crew, only to wear a shirt criticizing Canadian oil production. Climate change cultists like him live in a world of denial. Vettel was just one of the most visible and hypocritical of those examples. The world is dependent upon fossil fuels, and they're going to remain so for many decades to come, no matter how loudly green activists scream or how much governments pump into unrealistic renewable energy projects. Germany can't blame the Russia-Ukraine war for their woes, by the way. Their energy crisis was coming to a peak months before that broke out. They'd shut down too many forms of energy generation, and renewable sources couldn't keep up with the demand. Simple as that. Ideology is dandy, but reality will trump it every time. Germany wasn't alone. The UK had been hitting energy shortages, and in California, there have been brownouts in power provision for years, despite them being awash with oil and gas. Now, Canada's been trying to move down the same path. We've shut down and regulated countless energy projects to death. New oil and gas infrastructure projects are impossible to complete, even if they manage to somehow get approved. We indulge in endless delays caused by extreme environmentalists, as we've been watching with the CGL line in BC. Speaking of the most ethical, clean-burning natural gas on Earth, by the way, Canada has deposits of it that could last centuries. The world's screaming for it, yet we won't let ourselves produce it. Quebec has shut down a pending LNG terminal that was slated for export and has banned development of gas fields in their province. Canada's Arctic has huge natural gas deposits and thousands of capped wells just waiting to come into production. We regulated the Mackenzie Valley pipeline to death, though, so we can't get the gas to market, while government handouts remain the prime form of income in communities such as Tuktoyaktuk and Nunavut. Canada's drained billions of conventional energy companies through fees and taxes over the years and has been pouring that money into electric cars for over a decade. And how's that worked out? Fewer than 5% of Canadians drive electric vehicles. So all this for what? So countries can return to burning coal? Let's not forget the countries that never stopped burning coal and have always been expanding the use of it, by the way. China, Russia, India, they don't care about our climate virtue signaling over here. If we do want China and India to consider switching to better forms of energy, we'd best start sending them natural gas. Windmills aren't going to cut it. The world needs to cut back on the irrational climate idealism and embrace practical realism. We can mitigate emissions through cleaner production of existing petrochemical products. The oil and gas sector has made huge strides in emission reduction, yet they get little to no credit for it. Love or hate natural gas, it's abundant, reliable, and cleaner than other forms of generation. Let's expand it. I mean, maybe breakthroughs are going to happen that are going to allow us to wean ourselves from fossil fuels one day, but we're nowhere close to that point yet. Windmills are expensive, limited in what they can generate, and they're unreliable. Solar, it's expensive, takes up huge tracts of land, uses loads of rare metals, and is unreliable as well. If the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine, you're shit out of luck. The world is trying to put the cart before the horse. Quit trying to shut down viable energy sources until the alternative is here. Trying to force the issue is only leading to world energy insecurity, human suffering, and is contributing to inflation. Germany can still serve as an example for the world, not as a nation saving us from climate change, though, but as an example of what happens when a nation lets hopes and dreams overtake their sense of reality. Let's learn from them rather than emulate them. Canada can power the world, but we have to stop indulging the climate extremists first.